I never thought I'd be standing here, in the living room of the house I once called home, facing my younger sister and my soon-to-be ex-husband. The tension in the air was palpable as Harlow and Zane stared at me, their expressions a mix of shock and guilt. "Piper, let's talk about this," Zane said, his voice smooth as honey. The same voice that once made me weak in the knees, now made my skin crawl. "Talk about what, Zane? How you've been sleeping with my sister behind my back." I snapped, my eyes darting between the two of them. Harlow stepped forward, her hands raised in a placating gesture. "It's not what you think, Piper. We never meant for this to happen." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Spare me the excuses, Harlow. You've always been jealous of my success, and now you've stooped to stealing my husband." I thought back to when Harlow first moved in with us, just a few months ago. She was a struggling actress, desperate for a break, and I'd opened our home to her out of love and concern. Little did I know that she'd repay my kindness by seducing my husband. Zane ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture I once found endearing, but now saw as a sign of his arrogance. "Piper, please, we can work this out. There's no need for things to get messy." "Messy?" I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "You made things messy the moment you decided to betray our marriage vows." I thought about the life we had built together, the whirlwind romance, the dream penthouse, the promises of forever. It had all been a lie, shattered by their deceit. Harlow's eyes narrowed, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Face it, Piper. Zane wants me now. I'm everything you're not, young, beautiful, and exciting." Rage boiled within me, but I refused to let them see me break. I had to stay strong, to keep my composure. "You're right, Harlow. You are everything I'm not, a backstabbing, manipulative homewrecker." Zane stepped towards me, his hand outstretched. "Piper, let's not do this here. We can discuss this civilly like adults." I took a step back, my eyes blazing with anger. "Oh, we'll discuss this, Zane, but not on your terms. I've already filed for divorce, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows about your betrayal." Harlow's face paled, her confidence faltering. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "I've got evidence of your little affair, and I'm not afraid to use it." Zane's jaw clenched, his eyes hardening. "You're making a mistake, Piper. You don't want to cross me." I met his gaze, unflinching. "The only mistake I made was trusting either of you. But that ends now. I'm taking back my life, and you two can have each other. Good luck keeping your secrets when the truth comes out." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out of the house. My head held high. They had no idea what was coming, but I did. This was just the beginning of my revenge, and I was going to make sure they paid for every last betrayal. Harlow moved in with us a few weeks after that fateful confrontation. I had my reservations, but Zane insisted on helping her out. "She's your sister, Piper. Family comes first," he'd said, his hand resting on the small of my back. I relented, pushing aside the nagging feeling in my gut. At first, Harlow was grateful, thanking us profusely for giving her a place to stay. She'd fallen on hard times, she said, and needed a fresh start. I wanted to believe her, to trust that she had my best interests at heart. But as the days turned into weeks, I noticed a change in Harlow's demeanor. She became more confident, more brazen in her interactions with Zane. They'd laugh together over inside jokes, their heads bent close as they whispered secrets I wasn't privy to. One evening, I walked into the living room to find them sitting on the couch, Harlow's hand resting on Zane's thigh. They sprang apart when they saw me, guilt etched on their faces. "What's going on here?" I asked, my voice tight with suspicion. Harlow smiled, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Nothing, sis. Just having a friendly chat with my brother-in-law." Zane nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, Piper, don't worry about it." But I did worry. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that Harlow was up to no good. She'd always been jealous of my success, of the life I'd built with Zane. And now she was worming her way into our marriage, poisoning it from the inside out. I tried to talk to Zane about my concerns, but he brushed them off. "You're being paranoid, Piper. Harlow's just going through a rough patch. She needs our support." Support. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. How could I support someone who was actively trying to destroy my marriage? As the weeks dragged on, Harlow's presence in our home became increasingly suffocating. She'd parade around in skimpy outfits, her eyes always seeking Zane's attention. and Zane, to my horror, seemed to relish in it. One night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen, their voices low and conspiratorial. "You deserve better than her, Zane," Harlow purred, her words dripping with venom. "She's so uptight, so boring. You need someone who can keep up with you, someone who understands your needs." Zane's response was muffled, but I could hear the desire in his voice. It made my stomach churn, my heart shatter into a million pieces. I confronted them the next day, my eyes blazing with fury. "I know what you're doing, Harlow. You're trying to steal my husband, to ruin our marriage." Harlow smirked, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "Oh, Piper, don't you see? I already have." Zane said nothing, his silence a damning confirmation of their betrayal. I felt like I was suffocating, the walls of our once happy home closing in on me. I couldn't take it anymore, couldn't bear to watch them flaunt their affair in front of me. I packed a bag that night, my hands shaking as I threw my belongings into a suitcase. Zane tried to stop me, his words hollow and insincere. "Piper, please, don't do this. We can work it out." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "There's nothing to work out, Zane. You've made your choice, and it's not me." As I walked out the door, I heard Harlow's laughter echoing behind me, a cruel reminder of all that I had lost. But I knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. I would make them pay for what they'd done, for the pain they'd inflicted on me. Revenge would be mine, and I would stop at nothing to get it. Harlow's manipulation knew no bounds. She played the victim, spinning tales of her struggles and hardships, all while batting her eyelashes at Zane. And Zane, the man I once trusted with my heart, fell for her act hook, line, and sinker. I watched as they grew closer, their interactions becoming more intimate with each passing day. Zane would brush off my concerns, telling me I was imagining things, that Harlow was just a lost soul in need of guidance. But I knew better. I saw the way she looked at him, the way she'd find excuses to touch him, to be near him. It was a dance of seduction, and Zane was all too willing to be her partner. One evening I stumbled upon them in the kitchen, their bodies pressed close together as they shared a bottle of wine. Harlow's hand rested on Zane's chest, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his shirt. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. They jumped apart, Zane's face flushed with guilt. "Piper, it's not what it looks like. We were just talking." Harlow smirked, her eyes glinting with malice. "Yeah, sis, just a friendly chat between in-laws." I saw red, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. "Friendly? You call this friendly? I've seen the way you look at him, Harlow. You're trying to steal my husband." Zane stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Piper, calm down. You're overreacting." Overreacting. The word hit me like a slap in the face. How could he dismiss my feelings so easily, so cruelly? I turned on my heel and stormed out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed proof, something tangible to confront them with. That's when I found the messages on Zane's phone. Late-night texts, flirtatious exchanges, promises of stolen moments together. The evidence of their affair was right there, in black and white. I confronted Zane that night, my hands shaking as I held up his phone. "Explain this, Zane. Explain how you could betray me like this." He had the audacity to look shocked, to feign innocence. "Piper, it's not what you think. Those messages, they're taken out of context." I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Out of context? I can't wait to hold you in my arms again, to feel your skin against mine. How else am I supposed to interpret that, Zane?" He shook his head, his eyes pleading. "It was a mistake, Piper, a moment of weakness. It won't happen again." But I knew better. I knew that Harlow had her claws in him, that she wouldn't stop until she had him all to herself. I gave Zane an ultimatum that night. End things with Harlow, or we're done. I won't be made a fool of in my own home. He promised me he would, that he'd cut ties with her and focus on our marriage. But I knew, deep down, that it was a lie. And I was right. Not even a week later, I came home early from work to find them in bed together, their naked bodies tangled in the sheets. The sight of it, the betrayal, the humiliation, it broke something inside me. I felt like I was drowning, like the world was closing in on me. I ran out of the room, my vision blurred by tears. I could hear Zane calling after me, his voice tinged with panic, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I knew in that moment that my marriage was over. that the man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, was nothing more than a liar and a cheat. But I also knew that I wouldn't go down without a fight. I would make them pay for what they'd done, for the pain they'd caused me. Revenge would be mine, and I would stop at nothing to get it. The image of Zane and Harlow, naked and entwined, was seared into my mind. I couldn't unsee it, couldn't erase the betrayal that had unfolded before my very eyes. I confronted them, my voice shaking with rage and pain. How could you do this to me? How could you throw away everything we had for her? Zane had the nerve to look ashamed, his eyes downcast as he pulled on his clothes. Piper, I'm sorry. It was a mistake. It won't happen again. Harlow, on the other hand, looked smug, her lips curled into a cruel smile. Oh, Piper, don't be so naive. Zane and I have something special, something you could never understand. I wanted to scream, to lash out at them both, but I knew that would only give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I turned to Zane, my eyes hard and unyielding. I want a divorce. I want you out of my life, out of my home. He looked stunned, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Piper, please, don't do this. We can work it out. I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. There's nothing to work out, Zane. You made your choice, and it wasn't me. I filed for divorce the next day, my hands shaking as I signed the papers. I knew it wouldn't be easy, that Zane would fight me every step of the way, and I was right. He tried to claim the penthouse, to take everything we had built together. He even had the audacity to suggest that I was the one who had driven him into Harlow's arms. But I had an ace up my sleeve. I had discovered evidence of Zane's embezzlement from our joint business venture, proof that he had been stealing from me for months. I confronted him with the evidence, my voice cold and unforgiving. Did you really think I wouldn't find out, Zane? Did you think you could steal from me and get away with it? He paled, his eyes wide with fear. Piper, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. It's exactly what it looks like, Zane. You're a liar and a thief, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. Harlow tried to intervene, her voice dripping with false concern. Piper, don't do something you'll regret. Zane loves you. He made a mistake. I turned on her, my eyes blazing with fury. Shut up, Harlow. You're just as guilty as he is. You knew exactly what you were doing when you wormed your way into our lives. She flinched, her mask of innocence slipping for just a moment. I don't know what you're talking about, Piper. I was just trying to be a good sister. I shook my head, disgust written all over my face. You're no sister of mine, Harlow. You're a snake, and I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done. I walked out of that room with my head held high, my heart shattered but my resolve unbroken. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that Zane and Harlow would stop at nothing to destroy me. But I also knew that I was stronger than they were, that I had the truth on my side. And I was determined to use that truth to bring them down, to make them suffer the way they had made me suffer. I met with my lawyer that afternoon, laying out the evidence of Zane's embezzlement and Harlow's involvement. We drafted a plan, a way to expose their lies and deceit to the world. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be pretty. But I was ready for the fight, ready to take back what was rightfully mine. Zane and Harlow had no idea what was coming for them, but they would soon find out. Revenge would be mine, and I would stop at nothing to get it. I knew I had to act fast. Zane and Harlow were probably already plotting their next move, trying to find a way to keep the penthouse and the life they had stolen from me. But I was one step ahead of them. I had secured a new apartment, a place where I could start fresh, away from the memories of their betrayal. I began moving my belongings out of the penthouse, a little at a time. I didn't want to raise suspicion, didn't want them to know what I was planning. It was during one of these covert missions that I stumbled upon the final piece of the puzzle. I found a hidden file on Zane's computer, a detailed record of his embezzlement and Harlow's involvement. I felt a surge of triumph as I copied the files onto a flash drive. This was the evidence I needed to bring them down, to make them pay for what they had done. I reached out to my journalist friend, Sarah, the one person I knew I could trust. I told her everything, from the affair to the embezzlement, and handed over the evidence I had gathered. Sarah was stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief. Piper, this is huge. If we expose this, it could ruin them both. I nodded, my jaw set with determination. That's exactly what I want, Sarah. I want the world to see them for the liars and cheats they are. We worked together to craft the story, to piece together the evidence in a way that would be impossible to refute. It was a delicate balance, exposing their wrongdoings without making myself look like a vindictive ex-wife. But I knew I had the truth on my side, and that was all that mattered. As the story came together, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I was ready to confront Zane and Harlow, to look them in the eye and watch as their world crumbled around them. I invited them to the penthouse for one final showdown, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for them to arrive. When they walked through the door, hand in hand, I felt a surge of anger and disgust. They looked so smug, so self-satisfied, as if they had gotten away with the perfect crime. But they had no idea what was coming. I stood my ground, my voice steady and unwavering. I know everything, Zane. I know about the embezzlement, about how you and Harlow have been stealing from me for months. Zane's face paled, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. Piper, I can explain. It's not what you think. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Save it, Zane. I have proof, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done. Harlow stepped forward, her eyes narrowed with anger. You're bluffing, Piper. You don't have anything on us. I smiled, a cold, calculating smile. Oh, but I do, Harlow. I have everything I need to destroy you both. I pulled out the flash drive, holding it up for them to see. This contains all the evidence of your crimes, and I'm going to make sure it gets into the right hands. Zane lunged for the flash drive, his face contorted with rage. Give that to me, Piper. You have no idea what you're doing. I stepped back, my hand closing around the flash drive. I know exactly what I'm doing, Zane. I'm taking back my life, and I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done. Harlow tried to intervene, her voice dripping with false concern. Piper, please, think about what you're doing. You're going to ruin everything. I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. No, Harlow, you and Zane ruined everything, and now you're going to face the consequences. I walked out of that room with my head held high, the flash drive clutched tightly in my hand. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that Zane and Harlow would stop at nothing to destroy me. But I also knew that I had the truth on my side, and that was all that mattered. Revenge would be mine, and I would stop at nothing to get it. I stepped into the penthouse, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew what I was about to face, knew the battle that lay ahead, but I was ready. Ready to confront Zane and Harlow, ready to make them pay for what they had done. The sight that greeted me was one of opulence and excess. Zane and Harlow were lounging on the sofa, sipping champagne and laughing as if they didn't have a care in the world. They looked up as I entered, their smiles fading as they took in the determined set of my jaw. Piper, Zane said, his voice smooth as silk. What a pleasant surprise. To what do we owe the pleasure? I ignored his false pleasantries, my eyes fixed on Harlow. I'm here to take back what's mine, Zane, and to make sure you and your little girlfriend get what's coming to you. Harlow scoffed, her eyes narrowing with disdain. And what exactly is that, Piper? You have nothing on us, nothing that would stand up in court. I smiled, a cold, calculating smile. That's where you're wrong, Harlow. I have everything I need to destroy you both. I reached into my bag, pulling out the file I had compiled, the evidence of their affair, of Zane's embezzlement, of Harlow's involvement. It was all there, laid out in black and white. Zane's face paled as he saw the file, his eyes widening with fear. Piper, let's talk about this. We can work something out. I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. There's nothing to work out, Zane. You made your choice, and now you have to face the consequences. Harlow stood up, her face contorted with rage. You're bluffing, Piper. You don't have the guts to go through with this. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Oh, but I do, Harlow. I have more guts than you and Zane combined, and I'm going to use them to make sure you pay for what you've done. I opened the file, spreading the papers out on the coffee table. The evidence was damning, the proof of their betrayal laid out for all to see. Zane's face was ashen, his hands shaking as he reached for the papers. Piper, please, don't do this. We can find a way to make this right. I shook my head, my eyes hard and unyielding. There is no making this right, Zane. You and Harlow destroyed everything we had, and now you have to face the consequences." Harlow was silent, her eyes fixed on the papers in front of her. I could see the fear in her eyes, the realization that her world was about to come crashing down around her. "What do you want, Piper?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled, a triumphant smile. "I want you and Zane to pay for what you've done. I want the world to see you for the liars and cheats you are, and I want you to suffer the way you made me suffer." Zane was shaking his head, his eyes pleading. "Piper, we can work this out. We can find a way to move past this." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "There is no moving past this, Zane. You and Harlow made your choice, and now you have to live with it." I gathered up the papers, sliding them back into the file. "I have copies of everything, and I'm going to make sure they get into the right hands. The police, the media, everyone who needs to know what kind of people you really are." Harlow was crying now, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "Piper, please, don't do this. We can make a deal, find a way to keep this quiet." I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. "No deals, Harlow. You and Zane are going to face the consequences of your actions, and I'm going to make sure of it." I turned to leave, the file clutched tightly in my hand. I could hear Zane and Harlow behind me, their voices raised in anger and desperation. But I didn't look back. I had what I needed, and I was going to use it to make sure they paid for what they had done. Revenge would be mine, and I would stop at nothing to get it. The fallout was swift and merciless. The story of Zane and Harlow's affair, of their lies and deceit, spread like wildfire through the media. Every news outlet, every gossip site, every social media platform was buzzing with the scandal. I watched from the sidelines as their world crumbled around them. Zane's face was plastered across every newspaper, every television screen, his name dragged through the mud. The evidence of his embezzlement was damning, the proof of his crimes laid out for all to see. He was arrested, his assets seized, his reputation in tatters. Harlow fared no better. Her acting career, once so promising, was destroyed overnight. No one wanted to work with her. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who had stolen her sister's husband. She was blacklisted, her name becoming synonymous with scandal and betrayal. I watched as they struggled to pick up the pieces, as they tried to find a way to move forward. But there was no moving forward, not after what they had done. Zane was convicted of embezzlement, sentenced to years in prison. He would have plenty of time to think about what he had done, to reflect on the choices he had made. Harlow became a pariah, a social outcast. She was shunned by her former friends, her once promising career reduced to a footnote in the annals of Hollywood scandal. I took no pleasure in their downfall, but I couldn't deny the sense of justice that came with it. They had made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. As for me, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work, determined to prove that I was more than just a victim of their betrayal. I surrounded myself with people who loved me, who supported me, who believed in me. I learned to trust again, to open my heart to the possibility of love and happiness. It wasn't easy, and there were times when the pain of their betrayal still stung. But I refused to let it define me, refused to let it hold me back. I moved into my new apartment, a place that was all my own. It was a fresh start, a chance to create a life that was free from the toxicity of Zane and Harlow. I decorated it with care, filling it with things that brought me joy. I hung pictures of my friends and family, reminders of the people who loved me unconditionally. I even adopted a cat, a fluffy little ball of fur who curled up on my lap and purred contentedly. It was a small thing, but it brought me more happiness than I had felt in a long time. As the weeks turned into months, I started to feel like myself again. I laughed more, smiled more, felt the weight of their betrayal lifting from my shoulders. I knew that I would never forget what they had done, but I also knew that I had the strength to move past it. I had survived their betrayal, and I had come out the other side stronger and more resilient than ever. One day, as I was walking through the park near my apartment, I ran into an old friend from college. We chatted for a while, catching up on each other's lives. As we talked, I realized how far I had come. I was no longer the broken, shattered woman I had been in the aftermath of Zane and Harlow's betrayal. I was whole again, happy and content in a way I hadn't been in a long time. I knew that there would be challenges ahead, that life would never be perfect. But I also knew that I had the strength to face whatever came my way. I had survived the worst that life could throw at me, and I had come out the other side stronger and more resilient than ever. Zane and Harlow had tried to destroy me, but they had failed. I was still standing, still fighting, still determined to live my life on my own terms. And that, in the end, was the sweetest revenge of all. Life went on, as it always does. I threw myself into my work, determined to prove that I was more than just a victim of Zane and Harlow's betrayal. I landed a big promotion, taking on a leadership role in my company. It was a challenge, but one I relished. I poured my heart and soul into my work, determined to succeed on my own terms. My colleagues noticed the change in me, the newfound confidence and determination. They rallied around me, offering their support and encouragement. I made new friends, too. People who shared my values, who understood the importance of loyalty and trust. We laughed together, cried together, and celebrated each other's successes. One of those friends, a kind and gentle man named Alex, became something more. We started dating, taking things slow at first. I was hesitant, still scarred from the betrayal of Zane and Harlow. But Alex was patient, understanding. He never pushed, never demanded more than I was willing to give. Slowly, tentatively, I began to open my heart to him. We shared our hopes and dreams, our fears and insecurities. We built a relationship based on trust and mutual respect. It wasn't always easy, and there were times when the old wounds would resurface. But Alex was there, holding my hand and reminding me of my own strength. As the months turned into years, I watched as Zane and Harlow's lives continued to unravel. Zane served his time in prison, but the damage to his reputation was irreparable. He struggled to find work, to rebuild the life he had so carelessly thrown away. I heard through the grapevine that he had taken to drinking, drowning his sorrows in a bottle. Harlow fared no better. She drifted from one failed project to another, her once promising career reduced to a cautionary tale. She became a fixture in the tabloids, her every misstep and scandal splashed across the pages. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for her, even as I remembered the pain she had caused me. But I refused to let their struggles define me. I had built a new life for myself, one that was filled with love and purpose. I married Alex in a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by our closest friends and family. It was a day filled with joy and laughter, a celebration of the love we had found in each other. We bought a house together, a cozy little bungalow with a big backyard for our dog to play in. We filled it with laughter and love, creating a home that was all our own. I thought often of the journey that had brought me to this point, the pain and betrayal, the anger and despair, but also the strength and resilience, the determination to build a better life for myself. I knew that I would never forget what Zane and Harlow had done, but I also knew that I had the power to choose my own path forward. I chose happiness. I chose love. I chose to surround myself with people who lifted me up, who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. And as I looked back on the woman I had been, the broken and shattered shell of a person, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. I had survived the worst that life could throw at me, and I had come out the other side stronger and more resilient than ever. I knew that there would be challenges ahead, that life would never be perfect. But I also knew that I had the strength to face whatever came my way. I had built a life that was all my own, filled with love and purpose and joy. And that, in the end, was the greatest triumph of all. So I looked to the future with hope and optimism, knowing that whatever lay ahead, I had the strength and resilience to face it head-on. I was no longer a victim of Zane and Harlow's betrayal. I was a survivor, a warrior, a woman who had fought for her own happiness and won, and that was a victory that no one could ever take away from me.